Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's call with Congressman Mike Levin. During tonight's call, we'll be taking questions from constituents like you. To ask a question, please press *3 now. You may also sign up for our newsletter by pressing *6 at any time during the call. Again, please press *3 to enter the call queue or *6 to subscribe to our newsletter. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Congressman Mike Levin. Congressman, you have the floor.
Well, thank you and good evening. I'm Congressman Mike Levin, your representative for California's 49th Congressional District, covering North County, San Diego, and South Orange County. When I was first elected in 2018, I made a commitment to you to hold monthly town halls throughout my time in Congress, and I've kept that promise. I've held more than 100 town halls so that I can hear directly from constituents. Thank you for calling in and for joining me tonight. I host in-person, telephone, and virtual town halls for all constituents who wish to attend and ask questions. The different formats work well for different people. I'm currently in my third two-year term as your member of Congress, and it's a privilege to serve you. In Washington, D.C., I'm working hard to lower health care costs, keep our communities safe, protect Social Security and Medicare, tackle the climate crisis, ensure veterans get the benefits they deserve, protect reproductive rights, and safeguard our democracy. I'm honored to fight for our district in Congress and deliver results that improve our quality of life. To ask a question, press *3 at any time. To subscribe to my newsletter, press *6. Before I take your questions, I want to address some of the pressing issues facing our district and our nation. First, I want to acknowledge the challenges we're facing at our nation's border. There's no denying that we have a broken immigration system and real problems at our southwest border that demand Republicans and Democrats come together to deliver pragmatic solutions. Unfortunately, far too many in Congress prefer to politicize this issue during an election year than to find common ground. There's too much finger-pointing and too little action. Recently, after months of calling for border security legislation, Speaker Mike Johnson killed a bipartisan Senate border security bill, apparently to appease former President Trump. This is politics at its worst. As members of Congress, we were sent to Washington to come together in a bipartisan manner to solve our nation's problems, not inflame them. And I want to be clear, continued failure to tackle our immigration and border security challenges is not an option. I, along with other House Democrats, am committed to working in good faith with members of both parties on solutions that make our borders stronger in a safe and humane way. I recently joined over 20 of my colleagues to form the Democrats for Border Security Task Force. Our goal is to work with Republican colleagues on bipartisan, meaningful policy proposals to address border and immigration challenges, provide resources for federal law enforcement to crack down on fentanyl trafficking, and solve the unacceptable backlog in asylum processing. Additionally, I support increased funding for U.S. Customs and Border Protection personnel and to ensure U.S. Border Patrol agents have the modern tools they need to perform their jobs effectively, especially to combat the scourge of fentanyl. I'm also a co-sponsor of the Dignity Act, the most promising bipartisan comprehensive immigration and border legislation in recent memory. It would not only address border security challenges, but also provide pathways to citizenship, all while strengthening our workforce. It's gaining momentum in the House of Representatives, and I'm proud to support it. In this divided government, coming together in a bipartisan manner to devise a comprehensive solution is key. No one will get everything they want, but I'm ready to work on bipartisan border security and immigration reform legislation that not only meets the demands of the moment, but also sets our country up for success. Well, there are many issues I look forward to working on in a bipartisan way. There are some issues and policies I won't compromise on, including protecting Social Security and Medicare, reproductive rights, and our democracy. On Social Security and Medicare, Trump and extremist Republicans have floated cutting these important programs, and I will not let that happen. Every American pays into these earned benefits, and they should be available when we need them most. Millions of Americans would be hurt if Social Security and Medicare are slashed or threatened in any way. I'll fight tooth and nail alongside House Democrats to ensure these vital programs don't lose a dime in funding. On reproductive rights, the fall of Roe v. Wade caused a domino effect that we're witnessing in real time, and it's affecting millions of families. Access to IVF treatment and contraceptives are under threat across the country. I support enshrining Roe into law and passing federal protections for IVF. In fact, on a town hall last fall, just like this one, a constituent named Nathan, expressed concerns about access to IVF, even before the recent Alabama Supreme Court decision threatening it. Your engagement here makes a significant difference as I work to represent you in Congress. On protecting democracy and our national security, it's critical that Congress pass a foreign aid package to help Ukraine and other allies resist our common adversaries. During his State of the Union address, President Biden warned that democracy is under attack, both at home and overseas. Putin's continued invasion of Ukraine threatens the security of not just Europe, but the whole world. Ukraine and our allies desperately need aid to combat authoritarian regimes like Putin's. And action will only embolden Russia and others to escalate their threats. We're getting ready to take some of your questions. As a reminder, press *3 at any time to ask a question. Before I hear from you, I'd also like to share some exciting updates on projects happening right here in our district. As your representative in Congress, it's my duty to ensure our communities are getting the federal resources and dollars we need. That's why I'm proud to share that I secured $17.7 million in new federal funding to go towards 15 crucial community projects. Thanks to this funding, the communities of North County, San Diego, and South Orange County will see new investments to improve infrastructure, public safety, and overall quality of life. This includes new carpool lanes on I-5, improved long-term resilience of the Lausanne train line, a reliable local water supply, road safety, bridge repair, and a new fire station on Camp Pendleton. I've also been working to lower your health care costs. I recently introduced a new bill that would help families dually enrolled in Medicare and an Affordable Care Act plan save money on their health insurance premiums. The bill would close a loophole that increases premiums for couples who see one spouse age into Medicare while another stays on a marketplace plan. I'm also proud to have passed legislation that has lowered out-of-pocket prescription drug costs and placed $35 a month caps on insulin. As a reminder, press *3 at any time during this telephone town hall to ask a question. Press *6 to subscribe to my newsletter. Since entering Congress, handling spent nuclear waste at the San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station has been a major priority of mine. In February, I introduced a bill that would require nuclear waste canisters to have a design life of at least 100 years. This bill would ensure that facilities like San Onofre are able to safely store nuclear waste while we continue to find a permanent solution for the fuel. Another key issue is protecting our coastline. Coastal erosion is causing our beaches to shrink, impacting coastal wildlife and the tourism economy. To help maintain our beaches, I secured over $41 million for sand replenishment projects in Encinitas, Solana Beach, and San Clemente. I'm pleased to share that Solana Beach just wrapped up its project last week, and Encinitas has just started up. San Clemente is expected to resume at the end of April. I'll continue fighting to ensure our coastline is protected and preserved for years to come. Lastly, I want to touch on the Lausanne Rail Corridor in our district. Over the past few years, beach erosion, coastal bluff collapses, and landslides have led to the rail line suffering numerous closures. I recently secured $4 million in federal funds to kickstart a study into potentially relocating the rail line to ensure the second busiest intercity rail corridor in the nation can function without interruption into the future. I'm also so proud to have helped secure $53.8 million in federal funds from the U.S. Department of Transportation that will go to the North County Transit District to replace the 108-year-old San Dieguito River Railway Bridge, one of the first steps if a decision is made to relocate the rail tracks off of the collapsing bluffs. Now I'll turn it over to your questions. Press *3 at any time to ask a question.
Apologies, Congressman. We have Macy from Oceanside on the call. Macy, please ask your question. Are you there, Macy?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hi,
Yes, ma'am.
Macy. How are you?
Good, how are you, Mike?
Doing great. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask why you haven't signed off on House Resolution 786 for the ceasefire.
Well, thank you, Macy. I appreciate that question. let me just say that I support a ceasefire that's paired with the releases of all remaining hostages and the removal of Hamas from power in Gaza. Additionally, I support a two-state solution that would allow Palestinians and Israelis to live in peace, security, and dignity, and to have their own countries. I also support more humanitarian aid for civilians in Gaza, and I've advocated for this with the Biden administration and the Egyptian government. I'm a co-sponsor of the humanitarian aid resolution in the House of Representatives, and I support, obviously, peaceful demonstrations. Everyone has the right to protest and express their opinions, and I am listening to your concerns, and I appreciate that. And with that, I think we'll move on to the next question.
Dr. Allen, you are live with the Congressman. Please ask your question.
I don't know if we have her or him. Dr. Allen, are you there?
Hi, Congressman. Thanks for taking my question. I was actually in attendance at your town hall in December in Oceanside, and you did get a lot of questions about the situation in Gaza, and you explained as a father that the children's deaths are really concerning to you. And at the time, there was 8,500 children killed. Since then, we're at 16,000 children killed in Gaza. And your ceasefire call is conditional. So I want to ask, why do you have conditions to your ceasefire call when we need an immediate stop in the killing now? Children are dying every single day. And as a father, when in person, you told me you seemed very genuine that you were concerned about the children's deaths, but your actions do not show this. So why not call for an unconditional ceasefire?
Well, thank you very much for the question, Dr. Allen. And as was the case when I saw you in Oceanside, it is still very true that I am absolutely heartbroken by the images, the videos, the descriptions of the humanitarian crisis. And as I said, I support a ceasefire in conjunction with the release of all the hostages that are held by Hamas. And I also support increased humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. I have been consistent in this. And as I said, I also believe a two-state solution under new Israeli and Palestinian leadership is the best path forward for peace, dignity, and stability in the region. Thank you for the question.
Our next caller is Ron from San Juan Capistrano. Ron, you're live with the Congressman. Please ask your question.
Yeah, Congressman, my name is Ron Halpern. I'm a semi-retired attorney. I am 74 years old, and in my entire life, and I've been a lifelong Democrat, in my entire life, I have never seen such a dysfunctional Congress as we presently have now, or a Congress which I frankly have held in such low repute. They don't seem to be able to get anything done, and evidence of that is what appears to be an almost certain bipartisan bill to deal with the border, and yet at the last minute when trumpets, put the kibosh to Republicans, Mike Johnson and company, voted against it. Now, do you have any sense that anything is going to improve in Congress with the way that is dysfunctional and is divided as this Congress is?
Ron, I wish I could tell you that I had great confidence in the ability of Speaker Mike Johnson to bring his party to the table in good faith negotiations around border security. It has been disheartening, but that has been a very tricky issue, obviously, for a very long time in the Congress. That's not to say that we haven't found common ground on a variety of other things. In fact, tomorrow we'll be voting on a package of 6 appropriations bills to fund the government through the end of the fiscal year. That's a very good thing. It's appearing that we will avoid a government shutdown, but so much else has been stuck in this era of polarization, as you correctly state. What I can tell you is I think the most important thing is for Democrats and Republicans to get back to the negotiating table in the House. And if Mike Johnson won't compel his members to do it, then we as Democrats who are interested in bipartisan border security and immigration legislation need to go it alone with the House Republicans who are willing to work with us. And that's why we started the new Border Security Task Force. And also I am encouraged that there is a fair amount of bipartisan support for the Dignity Act, as I mentioned before. That is a comprehensive border security and immigration bill that not only includes the border security measures, but also a path to citizenship for those who are working hard, playing by the rules, paying taxes, etc. So you can't give up hope. And my experience in my 5 years has been that you have to be prepared for the right opportunity to present itself. And when you work in good faith across the aisle and you try to exchange ideas and reach some common ground, you are prepared for that opportunity when you might be able to act. I can't tell you it's going to be next month or even this year, but hey, around here, my crystal ball is a bit cloudy these days. You never know how things are going to go. Thank you very much for the question.
Once again, please remember to press *3 if you'd like to enter the call queue to ask a question. Our next caller is Randy from Oceanside. Randy, you are live with the Congressman. Please ask your question.
Hi, thanks for taking the call.
Thank you, Randy.
I'm just curious why we can't get the Tijuana River sewage situation cleaned up.
Well, I'll tell you something, Randy. This has been an extraordinarily frustrating thing for me. When I started in 2019, you might remember that we had the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade deal. And I had been reading for many years about the problems at the Tijuana River Valley and its impact on our entire region. You know, some people say you're a congressman from North County. What do you care about what's happening in the Tijuana River? But the reality is it impacts the entire county of San Diego when you have very bad water quality down in the southern part of San Diego County. And we saw the USMCA, that trade deal, as an opportunity to exercise leverage and to get funding for this problem. This problem goes back many years, and it's very easy to point fingers. The EPA could point fingers at the Mexican government. The Mexican government can point fingers at the U.S. Even within the U.S., the different agencies can point fingers. But the question was, how do we fix it? And we got $300 million. I was able to work with my colleagues and be very persistent and get $300 million. I give credit to the Republicans involved as well to get that funding. And ultimately, President Trump and Speaker Pelosi all agreed to it, and we got that money. But then what happened is it turned out that that was insufficient. So there was a lot of maintenance and other concerns for the South Bay wastewater treatment plant that were unknown after many years of very poor maintenance on the plant. And so the amount of money that now they say they need is roughly double, more like $600 million. At the same time, you have down in Mexico, you have the San Antonio de los Buenos plant that has been in disrepair for some time. The Lopez Obrador government has committed to cleaning that situation up, and they're actually starting construction. Of course, in the meantime, this doesn't solve any of the problems at Imperial Beach or Coronado or any of the other South Bay communities. But we have a request in for the additional $310 million that's needed. I give great credit to my colleagues here in the San Diego region, like Scott Peters and Juan Vargas, for their leadership. And we've got to get the job done. It's unacceptable that it's taken this long. We've got to stop pointing fingers, and we've got to get the rest of that money and get this plant cleaned up so that we can open those beaches again. And I thank you for the question.
Our next caller is Jeff. Jeff, you are live with the Congressman. Please ask your question.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call, Mike. My question is, we've been kind of stalled with getting the funding for Ukraine, Taiwan, by the House Republicans. And there has been talk of using the discharge petition where you can bypass the leadership. what's the status of that, and is that something that still might be happening, hopefully soon, for the people of Ukraine?
Well, I'll tell you something. We desperately need to get that money across the finish line. We need to do all we can to support Ukraine's fight for freedom. We need to show the U.S.'s continued commitment to doing everything we can, humanitarian, military, security assistance for Ukraine. You know, their fight against Putin's illegal invasion, I think, has implications not only in Ukraine, but really for the future of democracy and sovereignty globally. And, of course, what happened is, through a variety of circumstances, the aid for Ukraine was tied up alongside aid for our other allies, for the Middle East, for Taiwan, for humanitarian assistance in Gaza. And then Speaker Johnson, insisted that any aid for Ukraine and for our allies and for humanitarian aid be combined with a border security measure or a series of measures. And so that's the Gordian knot that was created. And the Senate then worked in good faith for a number of months, around 5 months. Senator Lankford from Oklahoma, a Republican from Oklahoma, Senator Sinema, independent from Arizona, and Senator Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut. They worked for roughly 5 months on a bipartisan border security compromise, one that was far from perfect. Arguably, the Republicans got more than they wanted than the Democrats, but it's something that I think is a thoughtful step forward and something that I would have supported had it made its way to the House. Now, Donald Trump, as you correctly said, wanted that bipartisan border security bill dead. There was a tremendous amount of misinformation about what was and was not in that bill. And you don't have to take it from me. You can see what Senator Lankford said about what was and was not in that bill. But the misinformation was rampant, and as a result, that bill didn't receive a vote in the Senate. The Senate then moved forward. Senator Schumer, Majority Leader, moved forward anyway with a standalone bill to provide aid to Ukraine and the others that we mentioned. That bill passed with 71 votes. It had 21 Republicans, and it had all of the Democrats, and it had Senator Sinema as an independent. Now, here's the deal. Speaker Johnson refuses to put that bill that already passed the Senate, that would pass the House. It would pass the House. I think it would have well over 300 votes. He refuses that to put that bill up for a vote. And it is deeply concerning, because what we see, and again, you don't have to take it from me, take it from foreign policy experts, national security experts. They have said that without further aid, Ukraine might be running out of time to defeat Putin, and that would lead to severe consequences down the road. I encourage everyone, by the way, to watch the new film that just won the Academy Award, 20 Days in Mariupol. It's available. You can just, YouTube has it available for free. It is a deeply heartbreaking story about the situation in Ukraine. All I can tell you is we have a discharge petition that I have signed. I think that we're up to around 190 members that have signed it. Unfortunately, there are no Republicans on the McGovern discharge petition. That's the clean version for the Senate bill, and that's ultimately the one that I want to see get across the finish line. And we'll keep at it until the job is done. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next caller is Jonathan from Gale. Jonathan, you are live with the Congressman. Please ask your question.
Hi.
Hello.
I'd like to ask about something you mentioned before. It's the Social Security Fairness Act, and I think they're considering of getting rid of the windfall elimination provision of the rules for Social Security. Given that the act, I think it has quite a high level of support on both parties, what are the chances, do you think, of it being enacted in this current Congress?
Well, we have to get it across the finish line. It is extraordinarily important that it's called the WEP GPO offset, that we get this done. It is a huge loophole for folks like our teachers, our peace officers, others who are public servants, that they are penalized as a result of that service and don't get their full Social Security benefits. So I'm working very hard on it. I think we're up over 300 co-sponsors for the bill. I was very disappointed, frankly, that we couldn't get it across the finish line in the last Congress. I'm disappointed that Mike Johnson won't bring it up for a vote in this Congress. I think that Johnson is concerned with the potential cost of the bill. We are, I know, waiting on hopefully a dynamic CBO score for this WEP GPO offset bill. What I'll also say is just generally, philosophically on Social Security, there is such a disconnect between where I am and where Speaker Johnson is. We know that Speaker Johnson, as head of something called the Republican Study Committee, has advocated for dramatic cuts to Social Security, proposals including raising the retirement age or cutting benefits or means testing, all of which would undermine the benefits that millions and millions of seniors rely on. I will not support any of that. I will fight tooth and nail against that. And we all want to see Social Security made solvent, but we have a proposal that would do that I'm proud to co-sponsor called Social Security 2100 that would basically say if you make over $400,000 in income, that the payroll tax that you currently pay on income up to $160,000, you would pay payroll tax on income over $400,000. You wouldn't pay anything between $160,000 and $400,000, but if you made over $400,000 in income and you pay above that, that would effectively close the funding shortage. At least it would go a long way towards closing the funding shortage for the rest of the 21st century, which I think would be a great, great thing and would guarantee that earned benefit for many years to come. And by the way, I was very, very disappointed when President Trump, just the other day said that he was interested in cutting Social Security. We need to be interested in protecting and strengthening Social Security. Appreciate the question.
Thank you, Congressman. If you're enjoying this update, I encourage you to press *6 on your phone now to get signed up for Congressman Levin's newsletter. Again, that's *6 to get on the email update list. With that, I'll turn it over to our next caller. We've got Sherry from Carlsbad on the call. Sherry, what is your question for the Congressman, please?
Hi, Congressman Levin. Thanks for taking my phone call today.
Thank you.
My question for you is regarding the situation in Haiti and international adoptions. So you have constituents in North County and, of course, all through California who are adopting Haitian orphans, and those are currently shut down. There has been a proposal by Congressman Moore in the state of Utah trying to rally support for an emergency evacuation of these Haitian orphans. So I'm wondering why no one has signed off on that yet, why you haven't signed off on that, and wondering what your plans are to unite American families with their Haitian orphans.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing up that question, and I readily admit to you that I'm not familiar with my friend Blake Moore's proposal on that, but I'll be happy to look at it. In fact, we'll take a note to go back and look at that, and obviously we'll circle back. I can tell you that I am monitoring this awful situation in Haiti, and I'm ready to assist in any way that I can. Obviously, if there are family members who are U.S. citizens that you have stuck in Haiti, or any of our listeners or constituents have stuck in Haiti, I encourage you to call our office. You can also call the U.S. Embassy in Port-au-Prince. I'm sure they're bombarded with calls right now, but please do call our office. And just know, as my opinion, as the situation in Haiti develops, we've got to continue towards humanitarian aid for the island. And all those U.S. citizens who are wishing to depart Haiti, I hope will be able to do so. I'd encourage them to monitor the local news and do so when considered safe. We're in touch with our State Department and our folks at the administration who are working very hard on this each and every day. But as far as the adoption piece, I'll be happy to look at my friend Blake's bill, and we'll circle back on that.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next caller is Trevor from Ladera Ranch. Trevor, you are live with the Congressman. Please ask your question. Trevor, you there?
Are you there?
Yes, hello.
You are live with the Congressman.
Is that
Okay,
Trevor?
great. Yes.
Hi, Trevor. How are you?
My question, I am fine, thank you for asking. With regards to salt, I understand that it sunsets in 2025, and I'm hoping, and I'm asking whether or not you're taking any action to make sure that it's not renewed.
Yes, we sure are, Trevor. And the state and local tax deduction, I'll just tell you, this has been something that's been on my mind ever since the Trump tax bill, where for the first time in 100 years, we as Californians are no longer able to fully deduct our state and local tax bill. And it's not just Californians who are really getting the short end of the stick. It's New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, Massachusetts. And, it's clear to me that this was a way for the prior administration to punish the state of California. And unfortunately, it had just that impact, just that effect. You would be amazed, or maybe you wouldn't, I don't know, how many of our constituents, and not just wealthy constituents, but middle-income constituents, teachers and nurses and firefighters who own a home in our district. I'm very fortunate. I think I represent the most beautiful district anywhere in the U.S., and we have about 60% of our district that owns a home. So if you own a home in our district and you pay property taxes, it's more likely than not that you're running into that $10,000 state and local tax cap just by virtue of your property taxes. This has been a huge hit to middle-income homeowners in our district, of which there are many. And what we're doing about it is actually when we were in the majority, when Democrats had the gavels, we passed two different proposals. One, which passed on a standalone basis on largely geographic lines, would repeal the $10,000 cap altogether. And that actually passed the House, and the Senate, which was then under Republican control, refused to consider it. And then, as part of the budget reconciliation process last year, the House Representatives passed a 9-year extension, but an increase in the cap to $80,000, from $10,000 to $80,000. And that would go a long way to address this issue, particularly for middle-income families who pay more than $10,000 in state and local tax, but less than $80,000. They would allow full deduction up to $80,000. So that died in the Senate as well, unfortunately. And so that leaves us now where at the end, as you correctly said, at the end of next year, that is set to expire. And we need for it to expire. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that happens. There are a handful of Republicans that agree with that as well. Our friends in New York specifically who have joined us on a bipartisan basis. We have a bipartisan SALT caucus, state and local tax deduction caucus, and we'll continue to work very hard until you can fully deduct your state and local taxes, because that's the basic bargain that we've had in California for, as I said, for about 100 years until the Trump tax bill. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next caller is Walter from Oceanside. Walter, you are live with the Congressman. Please ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Congressman.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine. Very good, thank you.
Good.
Excuse me?
I said good evening from Washington.
Oh, wow. Too bad you were in California. It's a beautiful day.
Hey, it's always a better day when I'm in California, I'll tell you that.
I watched that fiasco the other day in the impeachment hearing. Now, is this going to continue? I mean, are they going to continue wasting time, or is there anything that the Democrats can do to put a stop to this, or is it just going to continue to try to muddy up the waters?
Well, here's the reality. When unfortunately, when the elections occur and the majority is chosen, the majority, in this case, folks like Jim Jordan and others, they can decide to conduct whatever investigations they choose, even if those investigations are unwarranted. I can tell you I have been watching relatively closely the ongoing sham that we are seeing. And, look, my belief is that high crimes and misdemeanors were a standard that the Constitution prescribes for truly dire circumstances. And it should be reserved for those things that rise to that level of being truly threatening to the future of our functioning democracy, to our institutions. And that standard simply hasn't been met. For example, the Republicans also decided to impeach Mayorkas, and they did so on the basis of maladministration, meaning that Mayorkas was not adhering to their belief of what Homeland Security should be doing, but there was no high crime and misdemeanor as has been understood for over 200 years. So I do see a misuse of impeachment. It cannot be the new normal that every new Congress and every new administration goes through this. It should be reserved for when there are truly high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, in the last administration, I supported two separate impeachment inquiries. One that was warranted after we saw President Trump try to get Vladimir Zelensky to announce a sham investigation into Joe Biden, his political opponent at the time, before the 2020 election. In exchange, Trump threatened to withhold funding that was necessary at the time for Ukraine to defend itself against Russia. Obviously, in hindsight, that whole situation looks even worse for the former president as Putin then invaded Ukraine. And then second, after January 6th, which was one of the worst days, frankly, in my life, and I think in the history of the United States House of Representatives and the U.S. Congress, and the incitement of insurrection on that day, I think, did warrant the impeachment inquiry. So, again, should be reserved for the highest and worst offenses, and I just don't think that standard's been met in this case, and I think that the American people, by and large, can see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next caller is John from Dana Point. John, you are live with the Congressman. Please ask your question. John, are you there?
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
you're live with the Congressman.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, sir. How are you this afternoon?
Doing very well, thank you.
First of all, I wanted to congratulate you on what you've been able to accomplish in spite of all the opposition that's out there.
I appreciate that.
Secondly,
Thank you.
I understand that there are issues with the Voting Rights Act. What's being done to get that back on track?
Well, it has been very difficult. I can tell you that we have the John Lewis Voting Rights Enhancement Act that we passed when we were in charge back in the last Congress. I was so honored to get to serve with John Lewis when I was a freshman. I was honored to travel to Selma and Birmingham and Montgomery with John and walk across the Pettus Bridge in Selma. Just an icon, and we named the Voting Rights Advancement Act after him to restore Section 2 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act so that it actually is, if you are legally eligible to vote, it should be easier to do so, not more difficult. That's the least that we can do for John's legacy. And I see my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, when John's name is used, are all incredibly supportive of John and his legacy. The way that they could actually support his legacy would be to support the bill bearing his name that I know he supported, because when he was here, he was the greatest champion of that legislation. We'll keep at it. it's going to be very difficult with Republicans holding the gavels, unfortunately. And the other thing I'll say that stood in the way when we were in charge was the Senate filibuster. And I think it is worth noting that some of the biggest proponents of the Senate filibuster on our side of the aisle and on the independent side, so Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema, are retiring. My hope and expectation is that we will have people who are more open, at least to a carve-out for the filibuster, or a talking filibuster, perhaps, for issues as important as voting rights. I'm certainly going to be advocating for that, and I hope we have the opportunity to see it through. We have to be prepared. Again, preparation plus opportunity leads to a good outcome, and I hope that happens sooner rather than later. And I thank you for the question.
Thank you, Congressman. We have our next caller is Gary from Carlsbad. Gary, you are on the phone with Congressman Levin. Please ask your question.
Hello, Congressman Levin. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm well aware of your efforts to deal with the issue of spent fuel at San Onofre. But my question is, why hasn't our government moved forward on the reprocessing of spent nuclear fuel? Because other countries have been doing this successfully for decades. And beyond that, 95% of what's at San Onofre and other facilities that have been shut down is reusable. And it would be reusable in the next generation, which is near term, of the new kinds of reactors, smart, modern reactors, modular reactors, which are 24/7 clean energy.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. And yesterday, in fact, we had the latest meeting of our bipartisan Spent Nuclear Fuel Solutions Caucus. I chair that with my friend Chuck Fleischman, a Republican of Tennessee, who's the chair also of the relevant appropriations subcommittee dealing with nuclear issues. And reprocessing was discussed in great detail in that meeting and many others too. My position is agnostic towards reprocessing, in the sense that we're going to need a solution around a repository, even in the event that we were to reprocess fuel. You look at countries around the world, France, Japan, many other places where they do reprocessing. Ultimately, the administration will work with the Congress. The reprocessing in the United States, as I'm sure you know, has been largely, has not been promoted really in the last 20 or 30 years. There are potential proliferation concerns, depending on the experts that you listen to, that they have varying opinions on that. But I'm agnostic towards it. I really am laser focused on the need for consent-based solutions for both interim storage and a permanent repository. And those things need to be done in parallel, and they should have been done decades ago. Unfortunately, the top-down approach that the federal government had been using towards the development of a repository led to the Yucca Mountain fiasco, and that is going nowhere. I think both sides of the aisle would acknowledge that's going nowhere from a political perspective, and there are significant technical challenges as well. Also, with regard to advanced nuclear and small modular reactors, I think it's important that we have the same enthusiasm for those technologies that we have, or I should say we have the same enthusiasm for spent nuclear fuel solutions that we have for those new technologies. So I think unless we address the end of the fuel cycle, even if we have plentiful advanced nuclear or small modular reactors, as some of my colleagues really want to see happen, and as some believe would be an important part of a zero carbon emission electricity mix, as you did correctly state, baseload 24/7. All those things are correct. However, we have to address the back end of the fuel cycle, or we're never going to be able to avoid the long-term impact, the environmental impact of that, which we want to try to prevent before too much further. I think we have around 80 to 90,000 tons of spent nuclear material, and from the commercial space, we'll wind up with probably 140,000 based on projections in the months or in the years ahead. And I think we need to be just as enthusiastic about cleaning up the back end as we are about new nuclear. But I thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Congressman. Again, if you're enjoying this update, I encourage you to press *6 on your phone now to get signed up for the Congressman's newsletter. Again, that's *6 to get on the email update list. I also want to mention that it's great to see so many people on the call this evening asking questions. There is another feature in this call. We have a polling question for you. We'd like to know, do you support federal protections for reproductive rights, including access to IVF treatment and mifepristone? I'm going to repeat the question. Do you support federal protections for reproductive rights, including access to IVF treatment and to mifepristone? If you agree that your answer is yes, please press number 1 now. If your answer is no, please press 2. Again, press 1 if your answer is yes and you are in support of those protections. Press 2 if your answer is no. Our next caller is Kevin from Orange County. Kevin, you are live with Congressman Levin. Please ask your question. Kevin, are you
Hello,
there?
Kevin?
Let's move to the next caller. Doesn't look like we've got Kevin on the line. We've got Axel from Oceanside. Axel, please ask your question of the Congressman.
Hi, hello, can you hear me?
I can, Axel. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thank you very much for asking. Now,
Sure.
Earlier on in this town hall, you mentioned that you're trying to work, in good faith, reach across the aisle with, people from both sides of the Republicans. But I have to ask, what are you doing about those who are not operating in good faith? Those who are trying to get away with as much as they can, like you mentioned with the Gordian knot bill, as it were, where they got a better deal than they should have.
Well, I appreciate the question, Axel. It really is not as bad as you might think. My belief is that if you just were to watch cable news or look at, unfortunately, look at some of the social media sites, you would just be so negative and doom and gloom about the future of our institutions and really what happens in Congress. And I wouldn't blame you for thinking that things are absolutely horrible. I'm not saying that they're easy. I'm not saying that everything here is roses and sunshine and everyone holding hands, because that's not how it works either. But what I can tell you is, after 5 years here, that you still can work together, and I believe you can get big things done when you work together. I'll continue to believe that. And again, it doesn't mean it's easy, but you can just chip away. And I'll give you an example. When I first got elected to Congress, I'd been involved in clean energy and the environment for a lot of years. And I was told that we could never get a climate bill across the finish line. We could never get a bill to reduce our greenhouse gases at a level that would actually have an impact long-term on climate change, that we couldn't work together to advance significant reform on infrastructure, that it was too difficult to take on some of the big, powerful interests and reduce the cost of prescription drugs for seniors, that we were hopelessly lost in terms of our domestic supply chain for things like microchips and semiconductors. But we were able to do all of the above. We did every single one of those things. And a big reason why is that a lot of dedicated, committed members of Congress and Capitol Hill staffers, more concerned with doing the work rather than getting on television and yelling about the issue of the day or casting aspersions at their colleagues or pointing fingers and placing blame, but actually doing the work. Turns out there were more of those people than maybe the public thought. And we're all still here ready to get to work. It's not easy with Mike Johnson because Mike Johnson, unfortunately, does not seem to be able to bring together his party around any sort of shared or common values other than trying to obstruct what Democrats are trying to do. And ultimately, that's no way to come together. It doesn't mean that I can work with every single member of the House. There are some that make it impossible and others that really shouldn't have been here in the first place. I'm thinking of George Santos, who we voted to expel a number of months ago. But by and large, the people that come to Washington, D.C. are here because they care about the future of our country and they actually want to do the right thing by their constituents. I thank you for the question.
Thank you, Congressman. We've got Mary from Carlsbad on the phone. Mary, you're live with the Congressman. Please ask your question.
Good evening.
Hi,
Good
Mary.
evening, Congressman Levin. Can you hear me?
I sure can, Mary. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. And I wanted to tell you that I believe in cooperation and incremental progress, too. So I want to thank you for your willingness to work, obviously, to come up with solutions and not create more problems. With that being said, what plans do you have, if any, to address, the growing income inequality and wealth gap in our country, and how this, has a destabilizing effect on democracies?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Mary, I think about this a lot, and I worry about the policies that provide massive tax breaks for big corporations and the ultra-wealthy at the expense of everyday middle-class Americans who are trying to make ends meet, particularly in a place like Southern California that, as we all know, is an expensive place. When you look at the 2017 Trump tax bill as an example, 83% of the benefit of that bill went to the top 1% of taxpayers. And now, unfortunately, if you listen to the former president and you listen to Speaker Mike Johnson, what what their side wants to do is double down on those policies, have another huge tax break for those billionaires and big corporations, and how they want to pay for it is even worse. They want to pay for it by gutting Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, and hurting the people who can least afford to be hurt. And it's beyond crazy to me that more and more people do not take them for their word. We need to believe them when they say they're open to cutting Social Security and Medicare to pay for a big tax break for the wealthy and for big corporations. So what's the alternative? Well, the alternative, I think, is growing the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, restoring basic fairness in our tax code, making sure that the biggest corporations are paying their fair share. And we're not talking about anything too severe here. We're just talking about bringing tax rates back to where they were during the Obama years. And ultimately, we need an economy that grows for everyone, not just for those at the top, not just for those who have massive holdings in the stock market, not just for a corporate CEO, but for the workers at that company. So I'm all about making sure we're paying living wages. I believe very strongly in collective bargaining rights. I believe very strongly that it was the middle class that built America in the first place, and that we'll build it again. We'll continue to build it again. And there's so much economic naysaying out there in the mainstream press, but when you really look at it, yes, we have to make sure wages continue to keep up. But I'm so proud of the recovery that we've had in the United States compared to virtually any other industrialized country in the nation, or in the world, I should say. Our nation made it through a severe pandemic, and we were able to come out very strong, still getting stronger, because I think we have invested in regular people and not just those at the very top.
Thank you, Congressman. Just a bit ago, we asked a poll question, and we do thank you for your response. Here are the results. We asked, do you support federal protections for reproductive rights, including access to IVF treatment and mifepristone? And we had 97% of you said yes, just 3% said no. So thank you so much for your input. And thank you again for joining tonight's telephone town hall with Congressman Mike Levin. If you haven't spoken to a member of our team yet about subscribing to the e-newsletter, please stay on the line. At the sound of the tone, you'll spell out your name and your email address slowly. Congressman, before we end the call, would you like to share your final thoughts on this evening's town hall?
Well, thank you so much. I really just want to say how much I appreciated everyone's questions. I thank you for those who listened today. Let me just say this. If you weren't able to have your question answered, you can message me by visiting our website. That's levin.house.gov, levin.house.gov. Our office is also here to help you with any issues that you or your family might be having with a federal agency, such as the Department of Veterans Affairs, Social Security Administration, or the IRS. And folks, we have the best team in our offices in Oceanside and in Dana Point. I do hope that if you have any issues, you reach out. And if you're planning international travel, make sure your passport is up to date. Routine processing takes about 2 months, so if you need to apply or renew, I encourage you, do it now. Again, please call my office at 760-599-5000 if we can be of help. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Take care.